All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know how we get down here. Whatever you may be struggling with, whatever your challenges are, whatever it is you're going through in life, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. And you guys know when you hit the play button, something great is getting ready to happen to you for you. And I'm actually going to be kind of in your seat because I have been very open and honest with you guys about how horrible I am in social media. I mean, just absolutely horrific when it comes to getting stuff consistently put out there and figuring things out. And when it gets there is going to be a point where I'm going to try to hire that position out. And I guess, today's going to be like me kind of getting a tutorial on how to really manage social media. It's Miss Tessa Marr, who is about to give us all a master class on what exactly we need to be using it for, how we need to be using it, all that stuff. So all that being said, Tessa, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Now, I know I mentioned social media in the intro, but I do want to give you the opportunity as well, because I'm assuming that you came up in a time that social media was not a thing. It was not something that actually existed, not, putting anything on your age or anything like that. But
I was gonna say, should I be offended by that? No,
yeah,
I'm
that
just
I was trying to say that very carefully, but
that's fine.
the point of me bringing that up is because I want to give you the chance to speak on your background a little bit. And I'm always fascinated with people that have mastered the social media game because it wasn't a thing. When I was growing up, there were the big computers. You had to, put an Ethernet cord in, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
Like all
dial up.
chatting was not a thing. So it's obvious that you've been able to adapt in some way and learn how to use it. So speak on your background a little bit, kind of how you grew up and some of the lessons that you learned.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as I was growing up and kind of high school, I would say that's when the first beginnings of social media at least took form for me. That was like MySpace,
Oh
Nextopia.
man, you're bringing it back for sure. I had a MySpace account. Yes, I
Yeah, I
did.
remember that. So I was definitely a participant in that, for sure. It was something that got me curious. I always had an aptitude for technology.
Right.
Um, but that's all it was, I would say. As I started to look into kind of what my next steps would be career-wise, I always knew business was something that I was really passionate about. My dad was an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I just got that bug from him early on. So that was always something that I knew I wanted to lean into.
Right.
But in terms of what business, I really didn't know. And so as I started to think about post-secondary, actually, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to study? And PR kind of stood out to me. Definitely been a natural connector as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
reasonably outgoing, and it just felt really interesting to me. So
Right.
those are the two areas that kind of had my attention. I actually didn't fully go down that route, however,
Mm-hmm.
but just some things that kind of got me thinking. I actually took a totally different turn, and I started my career working at an airline. So I started with WestJet Airlines when I was actually quite young. I started in the office there, and yeah, got to learn a lot about incredible business operation. Obviously,
Right.
I was on a particular team where I was supporting the in-flight team, so the flight attendants,
Mm-hmm.
and being in my young 20s and seeing how they get to travel the world and not even work that many days.
Mm-hmm.
I really got bit by the travel bug. And so I decided I would just take 6 months to 2 years out of my, quest for a career,
Mm-hmm.
and go see the world. And yeah, I ended up flying for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an incredible adventure.
Yeah.
But what that did is it gave me space because flying, I mean, don't get me wrong, flying, being a flight attendant is also a very hard job. Just it does also open up some
My
space
cousin's
for you.
actually a flight attendant, and I know exactly. I know what the lifestyle's like and stuff.
Yeah. It was like incredible when I was in my 20s. I'm so grateful for that period of my career. But just shout out to all the flight attendants out there. Like, we're not going to
Yeah,
sit
you're
here.
right. As you mature, it starts to get really challenging because you start
Yeah.
thinking about your family and what you want to build,
Yes.
especially being young. So I understand. I know what you're going through when
Yeah.
it comes to that.
Yeah, and it wears on you, I tell you, with the time changes and being away from home and the customer service. And anyway, but this isn't about being a flight attendant. We get a whole another podcast about being a flight
Yes,
attendant.
we
I have
can.
lots of people that would
I
participate in that.
would, I would actually. The thing is, I know my cousin would definitely love that episode because she had actually, while she was doing it, I think she actually started a video blog just talking
Oh,
about
really?
travel insurance. It didn't last long, but just things that you would need it upon travel. And
Yeah,
she would say these same things where, look, you might look good early, but listen, it's not for everybody. It's just
it's
really
not
not
for
for
everybody. And certainly not for a long period of time. Like the
a
people
long
that have
period of
stuck
time,
it
right?
out, just like all the power to them.
But to
Um,
that though, to that point, it kind of has me thinking because I do believe in what you're saying in terms of an entrepreneurial vision. And the
yeah,
thing that all of us entrepreneurs have in common is everything that we've done. When you mention your dad, seeing your dad growing up and that entrepreneur bug,
Yeah.
you, and then you're in the business of an airline, and airlines, you're learning how operations cost, but then the element of traveling everywhere, that
Yeah.
has to have a positive effect on the work you do now, because as I
Right.
was listening to you before, you're asking certain questions about, how, vanity metrics and how to put your stuff out there and making it so people actually know that not to waste their time and all that kind of stuff. And all of that really ties in. So I'm sure you're incredibly thankful for the experience
Oh
you
my
had.
gosh.
Yeah.
And yeah, flying was really allowed me to start my business. Like, I don't know how this would have all occurred had I not had a career like that, because it was so flexible. I
Yes.
had the space to actually start something while I was flying. So I didn't wait till I was done flying to get this going.
Yeah.
So it was 2012. I was living in Calgary, Alberta at the time, up in Canada. And yeah, I was just starting to get like
Hmm.
itch for something more. And so I
Hmm.
was starting to pay attention, and it's kind of a funny story because where all the best ideas come from. There, my idea was born at a bar. It was a Saturday morning. I
Oh
was,
my, I'm glad you. Yes. All right. So I gotta tell the story now. This book I wrote was started at a bar. So I'm a boxing trainer,
oh my
right?
God.
While I was feeling like you, very stuck in kind of this boxing training gym, and there was
Yeah.
a basketball guy that sat right next to me. He goes, "Hey, what's the best way for a basketball player to train as a boxer?" And I have it right here in the book. The jab step. You take a jab step, you throw a jab, and a whole book comes out of that. It's that
Oh my
one
gosh.
question. So it's at a bar, we're drinking, we're throwing it back, talking sports, and I'm like, man, that's a good point. So
Yeah.
I get your point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I always say that in my orientation. I'm like, so you get an idea of the kind of culture that we have here. This was
Yes.
great.
Yes.
So yeah, Saturday morning I was mildly hungover, won't
Hmm.
lie, in my 20s. And back then I had the capacity, I suppose, to go out multiple nights in a weeknight or a weekend, I should say. So I was sitting there with my girlfriend having a Caesar, and we were trying to decide where to go that night. And
Hmm.
so at that point in time in 2012, Nenshi was mayor in Calgary, and he
Hmm.
was a really active participant on Twitter, now X, obviously.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that's not uncommon at all. Like nowadays, we know Twitter next to be actually like very political, but at the time that was very new. And he was quite a
I remember
pioneer in
that
that.
time too. It was actually for I mean, I have an account. I very rarely
Yeah,
even check it. It just automatically
I
stuff
don't
comes
either.
up. But right. Yeah, at that point I had no idea what the @ sign was or anything like that. I was so like dialed in. And now that you got me thinking back to that 2012 version of me, I was so dialed into what it is I wanted to do, that all that new stuff was just going in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, yeah. It was just all kind of beginning back then. And
Hmm.
it's so weird to think because Twitter is my absolute least favorite platform at this point. I actually gave a keynote last year and I started it with a eulogy to Twitter. And I was like, yeah, Twitter needs to die. Anyway,
Yes, I
I
agree.
digress. I digress. But yeah, so I took to Twitter, oddly enough, which is like the weirdest behavior to use Twitter for at this point in time. But I
Yes.
went there and I tweeted and tagged 8 different bars and restaurants on 17th Avenue and said, "Who wants to host me and 7 girlfriends tonight?" So weird. Again, who would ever do that? And
Wow.
only one of them responded and said, "Hey, oh my God, we'd love to have you in. Free glass of bubbly for all of you if you come." So of course we went. Of course the bubbly was absolutely cheap, and this cost them nothing to get us to come in there. We then proceeded to take probably blurry photos and tweet the photos tagging the bar. Also very weird, back in the day.
I think they
But
called it what, twit pick or some nonsense like that.
yeah, like
Yeah.
anyway, cringe to share this story now, but that is absolutely a real thing back then. And it ended up becoming our local. So like they met us at the door, they knew my name because of Twitter. Like it absolutely took zero effort on their part besides responding to one tweet and some really, really of their cheapest champagne. And we ended up going there all the time, spending so much money, becoming such brand advocates for this bar.
Mhm.
And it just really got me thinking, like, what a miss. The other 7 bars and restaurants never once acknowledged it.
Mhm.
And like they could have had all of that business. And so that's what really sparked my interest in social media. So from that point on, I just started to really pay attention and just notice who's using it, who's not using it, how. I started talking to business owners about it. They were very flippant back then, like, oh, social media, twit this, twit that. Like, we don't get it. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not going to have an impact.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so that's where I feel like there was a gap. I started to notice there's definitely a gap here, and the ones that were using it were it was very effective for them. And as a consumer, that's one thing that I always use in marketing is I always really pay attention to my own consumer behavior.
Mhm.
And so if I'm like drawn to shop or if I'm drawn to do this or that, I really try and pay attention, and I'm super
Mhm.
curious about that. And I think
Right.
that's really important for marketers.
Right. So
So
first of all, we gotta shout out Dad on this, because as you're talking, I'm recognizing the entrepreneurial spirit that you have with whatever's new. So even, in a bar full of your girlfriends, you probably the work is kind of least thing from your mind at this point. But
Yeah.
still, as you kind of gather yourself and sober up or whatever it is you want to call it, you realize, wait a minute, the other 7 bars missed out, or 6 bars, excuse me, missed
Yeah.
out on business. Let me dial in to the actual people that are going to support. And when it comes to the use of the internet and social media and everything like that, it really is going to boil down to a lot of these old school principles where you got to build your specific audience, know who you're going to serve, and just focus on serving them every single day. If they like just getting emails, hey, you don't really need a social media account. You could just go, directly communicate with your audience via email. They like the old fashioned, hey, pick up the phone, call them, then do that. And I'd love for you to kind of speak on some of the things that a lot of people go wrong with in social media. And I've been guilty of this too, in terms of maybe spending too much time on it or thinking that it's the only way to market it, or they're just doing it and that is going to kind of fill the I did my marketing box for the
Right.
day or for the year, and they're wondering why they're not getting the results. They're wondering why they're not getting business and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh my God, the things that do wrong, people do wrong on social media.
Yeah, and we
I
have
wrote
unlimited
a book
time.
about
So
that.
yeah, we have
Yeah,
unlimited time.
so
So
for
go ahead, do
sure.
it.
It's a good question. It's a good question though. And I mean, we enter into these conversations a lot, and as part of our sales process, obviously we spot someone with a really great brand and their social media is just completely falling flat. And so there's lots of different reasons why that could be happening. But just to like list a bunch, I would say overarching, the biggest reason is there's no strategy to it. I think social media gets a really, really bad reputation for being like likes and follows and memes and trending content. And it
Mhm.
is that too, that does matter. But if it's just that in a silo, then it's kind of meaningless, you know? And I think that's where like executives are like, social media, oh my God, like what impact does that have?
Right.
So it's really important. And our team always pushes, anytime we work with a new client, we always spend a considerable amount of time in strategy, not
Mhm.
just us building a social media strategy, but first understanding what their overall marketing strategy is. Because
Okay.
again, if I'm just building something that's like, this will get you a lot of engagement,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So what does that mean for the company? You know, like
Exactly.
if you're not learning from if you're not building something that plugs into the overall picture, then you can't make an impact. So I think that's the biggest like
Yeah,
way to sum it up.
no, the thing is, I'm glad you mentioned that. And I want to make sure I kind of redefine the question as well, because
Sure.
there's a lot of business owners that tune into this show. And like me, again, they're focused on the revenue generating, they're focused on the things that
Yeah.
are on social media, making sure you're just doing what you have to do to build a foundation for your company, make sure people are happy within your staff. So when we're talking strategy, where do you kind of start when it comes to people who come to you and say, hey,
Right.
I need this, I need that? How do you make it so they're pinpointing a certain strategy, or making it so, I mean, have you ever actually had to turn people away and say, hey, look, you don't have a strategy, you need to build one, then come find me? Because if I take your money and you don't have a strategy, it's ultimately going to affect me in the wrong, because you're going to spread bad words and stuff like that. So kind of dive into that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And we definitely do. I try not to turn people away, but I might send them to another resource.
Yeah.
We have a lot of
Because that's
partners
your
that are,
reputation. Yeah, that's your company. That's
yeah,
your baby, man.
for sure.
Bullshit. Like, hey, come on, man.
Yeah, and social media is not cheap. Like, let me just call a
Right.
spade a spade here.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's something I've seen change over the years. I
Mhm.
remember my very first, not to digress too far, but my trying to get into this, I offered this business, small business,
Mhm.
to do their social media for free for 3 months, just to kind of like be able to test my own skills. And at the end, I pitched them and I was like, okay, I'm going to charge you $250 a month to handle your social media. And they turned me down. They were like, it's too much money. I
Oh,
mean, we are charging way more than that now,
I
but
I am sure they're regretting that decision now.
well, I'm
1,000%.
sure I would have raised their prices by now
Yeah,
too.
exactly. To get that for 250 is a steal, folks. I'm just telling
Yeah,
you right now. That's everybody has to adapt to it. And
it's
again,
true.
if you're like me, you want to get to a point where you can just have enough money and pay someone to do it, so you can just focus on
Totally.
what you do great. So
Totally. Which I love. And I mean, and again, it is expensive, but it's also important to invest the right amount for the amount of revenue that you're making too. So I also don't want to bring,
yeah,
work with a client who's they're just not at a level right now where it makes sense for them to use an agency. There's lots of other great resources they could use that fit into where they're at.
yes.
So it's like this chicken before the egg kind of a thing. But
Hmm.
anyway, to get to your story, yeah, or your question, sorry, when people come to us, what are the key things we look for in a strategy? First of all, we're looking for them to understand their marketing funnel, and their brand. Those are kind of the two key things that I really need to see from a client to know that we can work with them.
Mm.
And thirdly, I would say that they have like the patience and trust in this to happen. Social media does not happen overnight. And I was literally on a client call yesterday and we were talking about our first quarter KPIs and our goals. And they were like, these are low. We're not stoked about these. And I was like, yes, I understand. And if a year from now we're having the same conversation, like that's a different story, but it does take time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm looking for in a client. I think the biggest thing with, again, being able to build a social media strategy that actually fits in is understanding your funnel. So
Mm-hmm.
what is the customer journey that people are taking before they actually make a purchase with you? How long is that customer journey?
Yes.
Where are your people hanging out?
Mm.
To your point earlier, like maybe it's actually not social media.
Yeah.
That's rare these days, but it's possible. It's for sure possible. Because
Right.
not only do they need to be hanging out there, but they need to be exuding the particular behavior that you need them to on that platform so that it makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Um, so for some brands, if your sales cycle is it's unrealistic for people to purchase off an ad on a social media platform. You need to know that and don't go into investing in social media with the expectation of conversions. However, that doesn't mean you
That's
just
impossible.
expect
Mm.
likes and follows. Like that's not good enough, but likes and follows then translate to what? And so how are you building strategies for content that help to nurture the audience, educate them on product, track your click-throughs, track your ads, like try and figure out how you're making it to conversion, even if it's not happening on social media.
Yeah.
Versus, you might have other brands where it's absolutely likely based on the price point, based on the audience behavior for them to convert on social media. And in that case, you want to behave totally differently. Maybe
Right.
you're a personal brand and like there's
Mm.
no world in which they're going to sell on social media, but you're trying to build thought leadership and clout. Your strategy is going to look really different there too. And
Right.
something that happens a lot there, and I would say not even just personal brands, but
Mm-hmm.
another big mistake I see people making is they really, really focus on the sale for social media. And
Right.
they sell and they're like, no, I'm not selling. I'm just telling a great story. And then I like have a really strong call to action at the end that
Mhm.
basically tells them to sell. And
Exactly.
that has a place, that absolutely has a place in social media. People are, it's a delicate way to put this. People are lazy. They need to be told what to do. There's
No, you're
so many
right. One thousand
distractions we
percent.
have.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Yeah.
I
So you
think
do
you
want those calls to actions.
Yeah, so you mentioned something that I really I think it's very important that you really dive deeper into, because I myself didn't actually learn this till after COVID, and I had so many things going on that I went and I hired a coach because of his system. But when you're talking about funnels, all right, can you really detail what you mean when you say funnels? Because this was something that I personally had to learn when I saw another content creator that was doing similar work. First of all, shout out to Dre Baldwin. He runs a company called Work on Your Game, and he had me buy I think it was like a $10 book, and then offer the low ticket coaching, and then the high ticket coaching, and then working with people all the way up. He jumped on this podcast as well. So I've been through a funnel, and then I've
Yeah,
been able to create one on my own. So can you kind of speak on that a little bit?
for sure. Yeah. And I mean, that's a great point. Like, to be honest, everybody listening to this, you have all been through a funnel. You've all been through multiple funnels all the time. And it's actually, I find it, maybe I'm just geeky, but I find it really interesting. Again, going back to like monitoring my own consumer behavior to be really aware when I'm in a funnel.
Yeah.
I'll get an Instagram ad and be like, oh, interesting. I clicked through and I went to cart and then I got another one and I was like, oh, now it's an influencer ad. It made me pause for longer. Okay, cool. So now I did that. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
because you
able
get it.
to.
You like thinking. You're like thinking. Yeah, that's how I am now. I actually did a video today. That's how I am when I'm watching college football on Saturday. So it's like
Yeah.
I learned to schedule nothing, no important stuff, because I am so locked into the games, and
Yeah.
it's how I built the business in the first place because of
Right.
how college football is run. I kind of mirror my business in a similar way, and I learned so much through playing the game. So even when you again, like you were at the bar, you're leisurely hanging out. It's like, man,
Yeah.
I'm still mentally. I'm here. I'm taking
Yeah,
notes.
yeah,
I'm
you're
taking
paying
voice
attention to
record.
what's around you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the best way to learn. Like, I don't have a degree in social media. That still to this day doesn't exist. So I think with social media, you can't just wake up and be an expert. You have to be really willing to like pay attention, learn, test, try, play. Like it's fun, but it is relentless, I will say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going back to a funnel, you really need to start by thinking about the top of the funnel. And so what that means essentially is how do you get people to notice you? Basically, that's all it is. So, how are you going to show up in front of new audiences that have never heard from you? I mean, there's 1,000 different tactics to do this. From paid social is a great way to do it. Hashtags increase discoverability, partnerships with, whether it be influencers or other companies or brands that have a similar audience to you, lots of different ways that you can get in front of them. But in that case, you really need to think about your content from
Mhm.
like, how do I surprise and delight and just catch people's attention? You talk a lot, or not you, sorry, but people talk a lot about hooks and hooks in content. And that's a big miss sometimes. And so when you're thinking about top of funnel and how do I catch someone's attention, you got to have a certain type of hook. You don't necessarily want to be talking about your product or the sale, but you just need to get attention. Then once people know who you are, so they're following you at this point, or they've been to your website maybe, or they are have seen your ad, and so you're going to actually retarget them at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Way or another, you need to start thinking about how to get them to really build trust with your brand and start to understand better who you are. I mean, you can think about it as dating, even. You walk into a bar, back to the bar analogy, you walk into the bar, you need to catch
Oh, yeah,
people's
it's all very relatable. All very relatable.
right? Then you start the conversation and you need to be like, here's who I am. You got to be interesting. You got to be sly. You got to be funny.
Exactly.
All those things. And that's when you really start to talk about who you are, your product or service, whatever that might be, educate them, get them to trust you and be ready to buy from you. And then once they're in your funnel have demonstrated enough behavior, again, every customer journey is going to be different. It could be if you're selling a $25 product, it's probably a lot shorter of a customer funnel than if you're selling a $5,000 course. Like it's just going to take longer for them to trust you to spend that type of money or that type of money. Then once they're ready to buy or you feel like you're ready to buy, that's when you have to put really, really compelling messaging in front of them. So that could be discounting, that could be testimonials, that could be product highlights that really, that really help, like things like that. And that's where you need those really strong calls to action. Go buy now and here's why, kind of a thing.
Right.
But if you're hitting the people that are in the top of the funnel that have never heard from you with that, they're like, what? Like it's going to be lost dollars, lost impact, all of that. And then the bottom part of the funnel kind of goes like this and then comes out again,
Yeah.
is your repeat customers. So once you have a customer base, and this is often forgotten, and is a great way to use social media. Once you have your customer base, how do you maintain and nurture a relationship with them? They're the most likely to buy from you again. They're your like biggest advocates if they're happy with the product, and they are going to feel so seen and connected to your brand if after they buy from you, you maintain connection with them. They post a story, you reshare it. They comment on something, you comment back. Like there are easy ways to do this, but it makes consumers feel so seen and so much a part of your brand. It goes back to how I felt with that bar years ago.
Yeah. And that feedback you get dictates your next move. It dictates your next phase. And if you don't have that feedback, you're kind of moving without a plan and you really don't know where to go. So the easiest thing for you to do is fall into this vanity metrics of likes and how many shares am I getting, all this stuff that doesn't lead to actual dollars and cents. And
yeah, and I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I always give such like shit talk, basically, vanity metrics. I don't mean to say that those metrics don't matter. They absolutely do. I mean, shares and saves are really, really high intent pieces of engagement. They tell you when someone is so interested that they're either going to come back to it or spread the word for you. So it's not that they don't matter. You just need to be tracking them and understand why they matter and what that behavior is telling you about what piece of content to serve them next and how you move them down.
Yeah, this example I'll give kind of will put a bow on that story and kind of prove your point is every single morning I take a run and right after the run I record a video and I put it on YouTube every single day. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'll be lucky, Tessa, if I get maybe a like on any one of my posts. All right, when it comes to Instagram, but the people liking it, it's running. Actually, I'll show you every single day they like this post. I don't even know who they are, but it's an organization that is there it is, Running Daily Club and Marathon Running Club every single day. And the thing is, I love that because I'm a runner. I'm training for a marathon. And I don't know even know who's behind the account, but I know consistently whatever it is I'm doing and how I'm being portrayed in the screen, I'm attracting the kind of organization, the kind of community that I want to attract. And and I tell that story kind of as a transition as well, because I do have to bring up artificial intelligence. We do have to bring up AI and how, obviously you have to make adjustments and what kinds of things. And the one thing I do want to make sure I make clear to the listeners is when she's talking about funnels and having your vision and having your process and having your strategy straight, AI is not going to do that for you. All right. So you're going to still need a coach. In fact, you're probably going to need a coach even more because now they have this tool in AI to help you with this, but your strategy and your focus and everything you're about, your vision has to be incredibly airtight because it now exists. So can you speak a little bit on how you've maybe adjusted to this AI world and what do you kind of see as the future and how you're able to integrate your work with what we have now?
Good question. AI is such a buzzword. I don't think I can do any talk ever without us talking about AI.
Oh
And
my
that's
goodness. I mean, just it's and again, I'm a creator. So I'm one of the stubborn people that I'm not using it. I want to like you see me right here. I have my notes here. I still
yeah.
write stuff down. I don't give a shit, man. I'm one of those stubborn people that'll take a pen and paper and write stuff down. I'm old school. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just old school with it. But I still utilize it to get some ideas and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of our like company Rockstar that we're working on. We use a system called EOS, so like our objectives this quarter. And one from our team is making a business case on how we can use AI to make our business more effective and efficient.
Mhm.
So definitely the stance that I would take on it and that our company is taking on it is it's here.
Mm.
So let's make sure that we A, understand it, and B, find ways to utilize it effectively.
Mm.
I think I've seen, at the beginnings of AI, and even now we're still in the beginnings of AI. Like there's lots of
Yeah. Yeah.
even a year ago, we were talking about using AI for image generation, and we would play with it and try it, and you'd have this weird hand, and like it was just
Yeah.
clearly a mess. We're like, no, no, no. As an agency, we can never put that out.
Right.
However, the other day, I looked at a strategy that my team was presenting, and I was like, oh, I love all these images. Where did you get them? They're like AI generated. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I
That's
definitely encourage my team to don't be afraid of it. Like always play, always try. Things are changing.
Mhm.
And yeah, ultimately, like that's what we're competing against. And so other agencies are using it. We have to be considering it. There's a tool that we're looking at right now that will take your product and build product videos out of AI that look beautiful. We haven't tested it yet, so I can't shout it out yet. But
Yeah.
things like that might allow us to do our job so much more effectively, but we have to test them first. So I'm definitely not afraid of it. I think in the very beginnings, maybe a year or two ago, the conversation was like, is social media management going to be obsolete because you can pay AI to write all your captions and do all those things?
Mhm.
Um, I'd say most people at this point, again, at this point, this could change, agree that no, you need the human interaction like with AI in order to make it what it needs to be. We can definitely tell immediately, like, again, I'm not opposed to using AI for idea generation and to help with captions or to help with writing. The other day, completely unrelated to social media, but a girl from my team was telling me that she just got diagnosed with something. And so she asked AI to build her nutrition plan, and it built her an entire nutrition plan. And I was like,
Yep.
wow, I never
Yeah.
would have thought that. So I think it's just a good reminder to us all to, don't shy away from it and try things with it, but just don't blindly go to AI with absolutely everything. I think for us right now, the biggest thing that we're playing with, I mean, obviously I mentioned the video generation, so we'll see how that goes, but also like, how can it streamline meeting notes for us? And, things like that. There's this really probably creepy. I don't know. I'll get back to you on this one that we're testing, where apparently AI creates like a twin for you, and like you can train it to do the
Not
things.
probably, definitely creepy. Just
Very yeah. So I don't know if that's
I
effective
was
yet, but we
thinking
are
like
testing.
bars going in. I'm setting my AI
Oh
version
my
of this
god. Well, I'm
bar.
hoping it stays
And,
digital
yeah, it's
for now. But
yeah,
imagine if it
yeah,
like watched me respond to email. That's maybe a
yeah.
bad example because that's quite personal. But like did something and then it was like, oh, I can do that for you. I have no idea. I have not used it yet. But anyway, so yeah, I'm like definitely feel a little bit sketchy about it. But again, if this is here in the world and if this can make us more efficient and effective and spend more time on the things that we as a human absolutely need to spend time
Yes.
on, like business strategy, social media strategy, like those things, then maybe it's okay. So again, I'm open to it at this point, but I haven't found it like locked and loaded.
Yes,
Uh,
hence the reason why you're gonna have to again consult with people that have been in this world if you want to adapt the right way. And I don't know if it's actually gotten mentioned yet, and I want to make sure we get this recorded. Is how did you actually start the agency? What were the
right.
when was it started and stuff like that? So good.
Yeah, yeah. I've kind of like jumped all over that a little bit, but so I mentioned the idea, where the idea came from. Then I was like, okay, this is a gap for sure. That's my entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. I see a gap in the market. I want to learn to fill it.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's no degree in social media in 2012. Still is not a degree in social media today. So I needed to start playing with it essentially and teaching myself. So
Right.
that's where I went to that small business and started doing social media for them. I also started a Twitter account back in the day.
Yeah.
I'd recently gone gluten free. So I started a Twitter account called Gluten Free Calgary, and I was just trying to build a community to share resources. Um, it kind of somewhat accidentally became a 30,000 person community that like required a bit of a business model and took a lot of my time.
Yeah.
It was amazing, but I ended up selling it 3 years later because I was like, I did not have a financial plan for this. Like, this is not what I meant to do.
That's cool though,
But
because you have to build community. That's actually, I think
totally,
it got said that Snapchat was offered, though Facebook offered Snapchat a couple $1 billion to create that story element.
yeah,
And obviously they can create story or Instagram, I think it was. They can create stories on their own, but they wanted that list that Snapchat had to build
right,
out the community. So yeah, building
yeah.
community is kind of at the core of all these stories, of all the success stories.
And that's a great example of where followers and engagement, those somewhat can be called vanity metrics, do
Exactly.
matter. Because if you actually have the captive attention of those many people, you can then sell them something.
Exactly.
Um, so anyway, so I did that. then it was 2014, and someone approached me and asked me to do their social media for like a fairly large B2B company. And I was like, oh, imposter syndrome. No, I don't really know. Like, they offered me money for it. And I was
Right.
like, man, I don't really know if I have the wherewithal to do that quite yet. And they challenged me on that. And so someone I knew personally, obviously. And so I flew myself to a conference in Victoria and attended the conference and just was like, I'm just going to see how I feel in a world of social media marketers, totally social media focused conference.
Mhm.
And I came out of it being like, yeah, you know what? I held my own here. I knew, like, of course, there's always more to learn. I certainly didn't know everything, but I knew like maybe 80% of what was talked about. So I was
Oh,
like, okay, I've got the confidence. I signed the contract. I started my business June 30th, 2014. So we just
wow.
celebrated 10 years.
There
And
you go. All right.
yeah, I know it's
10-year
crazy.
anniversary, right?
Yeah, thank you. That was exciting to celebrate. So yeah, that's how it all came to be. I updated my LinkedIn, another social media plug.
Mm,
So on like July 1st or whatever it was, and then quickly got a message from someone I knew through Gluten Free Calgary,
mm,
who worked, like, she was head of communications for a very, very large, like 18,000 person company in
mm,
Canada, United States. She reached out and said, oh my God, if you're doing this professionally, I want to hire you for the company I work for. Can you
mm.
fly out to Calgary? I had moved to Vancouver at that point and
Yeah.
pitch the VP. And I was like, yeah, sure. So jumped on a plane, flew out, pitched this VP, like,
Yeah.
way, absolutely not enough money, but I mean, maybe appropriate for who I was at that stage.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
because it was still kind of new position. It's sort of at that time. It was something that businesses were finally coming around to and say, look, we got to hire someone to do this.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, he agreed on the spot, which is a sign that you price too low generally, but fine, that felt really good in my infancy. And then
Mm,
on the spot as well, he said to me, also, like, we have a bunch of executives, and I feel like the story would be propelled better. Oh, sorry, be propelled better if they
That's right. My
participated.
thing always comes on the, I don't know how you got
I,
the.
yeah, it would do better if they participated in social media. Do you agree? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And he said, okay, do you offer an executive coaching program? And I
Mm,
was like, absolutely. He's like, what does it cost? And I said, $1,000 for up to 10 executives. And he was like,
okay,
great, we'll add
yeah.
that too. And
Yeah.
I was like, great. And so I boarded the plane, sat down, opened my laptop, and was like, Word document, executive pro coaching program, module one.
There
Totally
we
sold.
go. One more shout out to dad, that entrepreneur. That's your daughter being that entrepreneur. Go ahead, girl. I like it.
That's what you got to do
Yeah,
sometimes. You fake it till you make it.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is too, when the point I want to really want to make clear to our listeners is it actually started with you going to a conference, and it is actually very important that you guys actually spend the money to be in the room somewhere. All right. And like I kind of alluded to at the beginning, just posting stuff, putting stuff on social media and then hiding behind the screen and all that, that's not going to
Yeah.
get them. Get in front of folks, figure out what the energy is, ask the questions. I'm quite sure when you went to that conference, you realize, hey, this is very possible for me to do it. So let's
Yeah.
go ahead and take that offer. So that's a very important thing too. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want to now, like, what would you say is the next phase? Like, do you see the company having events on their own? Like, how do you build this thing out in the next, 10, 15? What's like your vision?
Yeah, good question.
Mhm.
We go into our strategic planning in 2 weeks, so I can let you know more details then. But yeah, I mean, I think for
Or what?
us, like, pardon?
No, I'm saying whatever you're able to share now. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, of course, of course. And we've got our vision and traction organizer very documented. So we're well aware of the direction that we want to go. And our biggest goal is to be a digital first marketing agency where all employees participate in profit share. So something that's really, really important to me is I don't want to do this alone. I love my team. They're incredible. At this point, they're so much smarter than me. Like, I sometimes come to these and I'm like, they should really be talking. Like, they know all the nitty gritty so much more than I do.
Yes.
And that's been the best learning for me as a business owner. It's been the hardest part is people management, but also the most rewarding part for sure when I look back at these 10 years. Is the people I've been able to do this with when you're in the trenches or when you're soaring high and it's truly up and down.
Mhm.
So I really want an organization where everyone participates in the success. So we're always looking for ways to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and growth, like our purpose, our core purpose at Marr Media Group is meaningful growth with great people.
Mhm.
So that means, not growth at all costs. We're certainly not looking to skyrocket and then, just to make money. It's
Right.
got to be bigger than that and got to be really thoughtful.
Right.
And great people. I want to have fun doing it. We are not saving lives here. We're the social team. It is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Uh, we spend 40 hours a week ish working together. Like, you should be having a good time at least
Gotta
80% of the
be.
time.
Please,
So
for the sake of humanity, please make sure you're having a good time. It's kind of funny. I have to bring this up because I have family in Canada, from Canada, and when you said pardon, it's like there we go. She's Canadian. She's Canadian. It brought it out of you. So, all
Yeah.
that being said, though, can you just tell people how they can get in touch if they want to reach out, if they want to work with you? Go ahead and put all that stuff out there now.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So our website is marrmediagroup.com. So you can go check us out there and check out our service offerings. We have two primary service offerings, full outsourced social media management, and then we have a new program that we only launched about 6 to 9 months ago, but it's going really well, called the Social Accelerator Program. So that's for anybody who wants to execute themselves, whether they have their own team or they're going to do it themselves, but
Mhm.
needs the strategic guidance and the coaching. So that's pretty cool. So those are a few ways to learn more about the company. For me personally, I love to connect. LinkedIn and Instagram are the two places that I hang out most. So I think the only Tessa Marr out there really. When you search me, you can usually find me.
Right.
But at Tessa Marr is my LinkedIn and my Instagram. So happy to connect with anybody who wants to chat social, business, or travel, whatever the case may be.
Yes, and all of that will be included in the show notes as well. So, Tessa, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back to being a flight attendant. You are traveling from Canada, you're in the States, then you go from the States to Europe, then you go from Europe to you're in that life. Pretend that that version of Tessa has officially come into the Zoom room. Give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Ooh, good question. I would say don't wait until you feel ready. You're never going to feel ready for any next step. And when you think you've got there, there's another mountain to climb. So don't wait until you feel ready.
That's it. Mike is officially dropping with that. There's so much of that you can take in with you guys. And as the promise, the guarantee I give you on this show, there'll be something that you can take, your moment, your life, whatever it is, that's going to make you better and help you deal with whatever challenges you may be facing now. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.
Thank you so